Welcome to Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Kevin Delp. Today we're looking at Spirits of the Forest by Thundergryph Games. Spirits of the Forest is a tile collecting game for 1 to 4 players. It plays in about 15 to 20 minutes. You're trying to collect the majorities of the spirit symbols and the nature symbols. Let's look at the prototype components. So in Spirits of the Forest, you have 48 of these tiles. You have some gems or reserve tokens, we can call them. And you also have some favor tokens. And you don't use all of them each game. You'll see that some are already laid out in this game. You also have a single player board. This is used for the solo variant of the game. So in the game, this is set up for 2 to 4 players. In the solo variant, most of these tiles are face down. But in the game, when it's your turn, you can pick from the sides of the board, the forest, as we call it here in Spirits of the Forest. You can take either a tile that has 2 spirit symbols on it, or if you can find one, you can get 2 tiles that have the same color, which would be the same spirit symbol, and these, but they can only have 1 spirit symbol on each tile. Now you'll notice that there's other symbols on these. These are actually nature symbols, and you will still look to collect these throughout the game, but when you're picking tiles, the nature symbols don't affect your picking of the tiles. So you can either pick a tile that has 2 on it, or 1. So you can pick 2 tiles that have 1 spirit symbol each on them. So that's what you're doing on your turn. After you do that, say I pick this one, then you can take your gem that you have. In a 2-player game, you get 3 gems. In a 3 and 4-player game, you get 2 gems. And these reserve, and you can reserve them. So I could then reserve this one here. But the next player, when they take a tile, they could just do like normal, just take one that has 2 on it, or they could take the one that I reserved. Now that hurts them because they have to then give up one of their gems and actually remove it from the game. So that's another option that you have. Players will continue to collect these tiles and put them in front of them, and what you're trying to do is gain majority of each spirit symbol, and there's actually 9 different spirit symbols on the board, and they are represented by the different symbols, but you also have the different colors, so that's kind of neat too. Some of the colors are pretty similar. You'll notice these 2 purples are pretty similar, but even if you're colorblind, you see that the symbols themselves are vastly different. So you're trying to collect these. You'll notice that the tiles all have numbers on them as well. The numbers tell you how many spirit symbols are actually in the game. Now, how many tiles? There's not 10 tiles, but there's actually 10 spirit symbols of this webbed spider lady. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There they are, all 10. You can notice the other numbers as well for that. So that will help you know, as you're trying to get majority of that spirit symbol, how many of that type there are. So you notice for this one, there's only 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. Now there's not that many of them, so you do have to be careful as people and players collect these tiles. If you do not collect a certain type of spirit symbol in the game, at the end of the game, if you don't have one of these red tiles, at least one, then you actually will get -3 points. But if you have the majority, say I have all of these here, and I actually have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't get 6 points. I actually get 4 points because that's the number I collected for this type of spirit, and I had majority of it. So you look at the majority first. Whoever has majority will win that majority, but they don't get the number here. They get the number they actually collected. The other thing to be aware of is the favor tokens. Now, when you collect, like say I collect this tile in the game, you actually will also collect a favor token. Well, that was kind of convenient, but these favor tokens have different spirit symbols on them. They actually also have different nature symbols on them, and we'll talk about that in just a second, the nature symbols. But they actually go towards the majority of your type. But you actually have to have at least one of that type of tile in order for these to count towards your majority. If all I had at the end of the game was this this favor token, but I didn't have at least one of these types of spirits in my collection, then I would actually get those -3 points. The other thing is these nature symbols. You'll notice that there's suns, there's moons, and then there's fire. Sun, moon, and fire are actually also trying to collect, but they're on all the different types of spirits, the different spirit tiles. So at the end of the game, you're actually you're counting up the majority of the suns, the majority of the moons, and the majority of fires. Whoever has the most of each type will collect the majority points that they have. So say I had these in my collection and I won majority of the suns, I would get 4 points because I had the majority of suns. Say that suns was the majority, 4 suns was the majority. Same thing with moons and fire. And if you don't have at least one sun, one moon, and one fire, you would get negative points for that as well. So I think that pretty much tells you how the game. I'll tell you my thoughts now. So I was able to play this at multiple player counts. 4 players really interesting because it takes 3 turns before it gets back to you. So the board or the layout of the tiles really changes before it gets back to your turn. So you really have to think on your feet and maybe even change your strategy mid-game because you might be trying to collect certain types. Trying to collect all the types of the spirit symbols, nature symbols, but you might have to change your strategy definitely with 4 players more than the 3 player on the 2 player. 1 player, I was able to play the solo variant, and most of the tiles are actually face down, so you're picking the one tile from one side of the board, and the other side of the board actually goes to the AI, the opponent. So you're sort of balancing, making sure you're trying to get the right tiles, because if the opponent gets a majority in any of the spirit symbols, then the game is over and you lose. So you're trying to make sure you at least tie for majority of the spirit symbols or get the majority of them. So that was fun. But I think personally I like the 2-player variant, the 2-player version. The 2-player sort of that back and forth, and Melissa was even saying it felt sort of like that 7 Wonders duel where when you're taking a certain card or certain card, you're revealing other cards or other possibilities for the other player. So you're trying to think ahead, moves in advance, saying, okay, that player's doing that player's doing that. So you're trying to make sure that you are revealing or uncovering cards that aren't going to hurt you as much. Now, the one benefit to Spirits of the Forest that I like is those reserve tokens. So you can say, okay, I'm going to reserve this. It's going to be a little harder for my player to take them, even though the other player can take them. It just hurts them because they have to actually get rid of one of their tokens from the game. So it's a lot harder for them to put those spirit token or those tokens on the game because they're going to have less of them. I found that really powerful to get those reserve tokens out on the board. That helps you manage what cards you're getting and how you're doing in the game. So I think 4-player is awesome. 3-player, I think personally 2-player. And if you like solo games, this is a great solo game to try out. Spirits of the Forest. Let's look at the artwork a little bit more. The art for Spirits of the Forest is beautiful. Look at the box cover and the different tiles. Even the backgrounds of the different spirit tiles are unique to each other. So you have leaves and branches. And in the rule book, it even tells you what each of the spirits represent. So you have branches and moss and dewdrops and mushrooms and flowers and web spiders and different vines and leaves and fruits. So very cool. So if you're looking for a light, fun, quick game that has that abstract strategy feel to it, maybe you like games like 7 Wonders Duel, then you can check out Spirits of the Forest by Thundergryph Games. They are currently seeking funding, and you can check that out at Kickstarter.com.